Hey, I'm so glad to be able to take a few moments and share some of my story with you guys as you're a part of this new group that my mom is pioneering and leading. And I'm sure this is going to be a great group. Mom's been cooking this for a good amount of time and she's been planning and preparing and, of course, praying. And so I'm sure this is going to be a great group. And I'm so pleased that a good number of you have been able to be a part of it. And I promise if I start drifting into an American accent, it's because I've lived in the States for a long time. I promise I really am Flowood's son. But if that happens, please forgive me. But I'm delighted to be able to share some stuff with you, sort of tell my story as you guys all consider the story of the prodigal God and how that relates for you. The prodigals that are in your life, the people that you care about, that you wish were following faith, people that you wish were kingdom-minded, people that you wish were living for the Lord instead of whatever else might be the specifics of the people in your life. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. One of the things that I want to say right from the get-go is I don't have the stereotypical story that you might hear, that cliched story of somebody that grew up and was angry and resentful towards God. You know, mom and dad, of course, being in ministry. Oftentimes the story is someone being angry or mad at, a mom or dad for, either enforcing religious shame or burdening them with guilt or whatever it might be, or finding that the parents are hypocritical. That really wasn't my experience growing up. I never found, I'm not just saying this because mum's obviously going to hear it, but I never found mum and dad to be hypocritical. I never had that problem with the church. I was never angry that the church took all of mum and dad's time or anything like that, which is often the story that gets told. That really wasn't my experience. That wasn't what I felt growing up in a Christian home. The best way I can describe it and how I've described it to others is I just never connected. I never sort of joined the dots between myself and God or myself and church. I never connected it. I never felt like this had much to do with me. I was there, but it never really had much to do with me. I'll even go as far as to say I believed in God. I'm actually going to go as far as to say I don't think there's been a single day in my life where, as I can remember, I've ever doubted that God was for real and that Jesus died for me. I think I've always believed that. I don't think I've ever doubted it. I don't think I've ever believed it was untrue. Even while I was not serving God at all and God was a million miles away from my mind, I don't think I would ever look back on that time and say I didn't believe that God was for real. I don't think that was ever my experience. That was ever how I viewed life. That was never my attitude. I always believed that God was real, but I never did anything about it. And so as I went through my teenage years, just not feeling any connection to God, any connection to church, not really feeling that it had much to do with me, I just did what everyone else was doing. I mean, I think the temptation when you sort of tell a testimony of somebody that goes from a life away from God and that sort of comes back is the temptation is to dramatize it. And if I'm just being completely honest, in so many ways, I was just ordinary. I did whatever I wanted to do. I did what the crowd was doing. As the crowd and as we got older in the high school years and your attention turned to girls and your attention turned to the party scene and smoking and drinking and getting high and all that stuff, I just went with the crowd. I just went that direction too. As everyone else got into all that, I just went there too. And part of my personality is to, if everything is at a 7, I want to take it to an 8 or a 9 and kind of try and lead the way. If the party's going on, I want to make it, even more wild. I want to make sure that there's a good story to tell the next day. That's my personality. And so in some ways, I guess I became somewhat of a ringleader in my group of friends. And, in lots of ways, I was the first one to get high. And so then I'm trying to get the rest of the guys to come on board and, do all this with me. And maybe I was the first one to, start getting blackout drunk. And so I'm trying to get the rest of the guys to come with me. But in lots of ways, when it's all said and done, I was just ordinary. I was just doing all the things that everyone else was doing. That's really what I was about. I was just in the crowd. I mean, yeah, I was trying to lead the way, and yeah, I was trying to live it up more than anyone else. But truthfully, I was just ordinary. I was just fitting in. And then, this is a number of years ago now, but once I started getting to 16, 17, I'm not a short guy. I mean, right now I'm 6'2". You're a big guy, and this is a number of years ago. You start going to the pubs, and they would start serve you back then. They didn't card anybody. And so I just got right into the party scene. Some of you might even remember when Ritzy's was Ritzy's and Zanzibar and John Henry's and all those places. I mean, I just lived it up at those places. And as often as I could, as I started working and I had money, I would try and be at those places as much as I can. And it got to the point where at 17, 18, I was in those places 3-4 nights a week, getting blackout drunk as many as 4 or 5 times a week. I mean, it sounds unbelievable saying it now, and as I've shared that with other people, I mean, but that's what we did. Me and my group of friends, we worked whatever jobs we had. For me, I worked at the McDonald's on Cardiff Road, and we got whatever money we had, and we blew it all as many nights of the week as we could afford to go out. And I would just get absolutely crazy drunk, text my friends the next day, how did I get home? Sometimes they'd be able to tell me, sometimes they didn't remember either. But it was just normal. It was just, this is what I keep coming back to, is that in some ways, as I say the story now, in a church crowd, there's some extremes, but really I was just ordinary. I mean, maybe I was louder than most, maybe I was more daring than most, but when it's all said and done, I was truly just ordinary. I was just going along with the crowd. I was just doing what was, what the world was screaming at me, is that this is what you do. This is how you find happiness. This is how you sort of, start to feel like you belong. And if you don't feel like you belong, and if you don't feel you're finding happiness, you just got to go to excesses and you just got to go more and more. And man, I bought into it. And I just went more after it and more after it and more after it. And one night, this was in December, and when I was 18, I was nearly 19. In the December, I was at mum and dad's house. I was still living at home. I'm in mum and dad's kitchen. And I'd been drinking, I was listening to music, which wasn't unusual, and I'm into the oldies music, like golden oldies, like the Beatles, the Stones, Stevie Wonder, Motown. I love that stuff. And my favorite is Bob Dylan. And I'm listening to Bob Dylan, and in the late 70s, Bob Dylan did a number of gospel albums. I'm listening to one of the songs, it's called Gotta Serve Somebody. And the hook of this song and the chorus is, it may be the devil, or it may be the Lord, but you have to serve somebody. And remember, I'd grown up my whole life never not believing in Jesus, never not believing that God is for real. And as I listened to that line, I'm stood in mum and dad's kitchen. It must have been 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm starting to get crazy drunk. It hit me. It may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you have to serve somebody. I never considered myself this terrible, awful, evil person. But as I listened to that, I knew it hit me. I'm not living for God. And I don't like the alternative. And it hit me that I needed to figure this out. I needed to do things differently. And so crazy early in the morning, I woke mum and dad up. I said, I need to get baptized, need to get things figured out. Mum and dad had no idea this is going on. This is, while I don't want to over dramatize how crazy I was before I met God, what I do think is important, what I do want to encourage all of you with, is that there is nothing that preceded this to suggest a spiritual awakening was coming. There was nothing that was going on in my life that gave any clues, any hints that I was starting to discover faith. None. This was so out of the blue. There was nothing that preceded this moment that even dared to suggest that I was going to encounter God in a life-changing way. None at all. But here I was, early hours in the morning, waking up my parents, drunk, to say I need to get baptized. And I'd love to tell you that from that moment on, I never turned back. I cleaned up my act and changed my ways. That just didn't happen. For about 6 months, I tried to do it both. I went to church with mum on Sunday morning with a hangover, and the rest of the week, you'd never guess that I'd had any meaningful moments with God ever. And then I moved out of mum and dad's house, and I moved into a house with 3 friends. And the goal of this house was this was going to be a party house. If ever you've seen the movie Animal House, that's what we were going for. This was going to be a crazy party scene. We were going to be living it up, large and in charge. It was going to be wild, and it was going to be great. And the house was, and this was deliberate choice, the house was literally a stone's throw away from Zanzibar. I don't think it's still there right now. I don't know what Zanzibar is now, but back in the day, it was the trashiest club in town, and that's what we wanted. And so the point was this house was going to be this crazy party scene. The problem was I started going to King's Church. Now I'm sort of gone from living in Basildon to living in the Newport City Centre, and so I needed a new church, and so I started going to King's Church. And the 3rd week that I went there, I remember Ray Bevan, who's no longer the pastor there, still involved, But Pastor Ray, he was speaking on the power of mercy. I remember the message. This is in July. So right now, by this point, I'm 19. I've been trying to flirt with this idea of having a religious conversion. It just wasn't going anywhere. But I was suddenly confronted with the power of mercy. And for the first time, I made a decision that I'm actually going to do this. And I went back to my housemates and I told them, hey, I'm giving up drinking. And they were mad. Like, they were mad because the whole point was this was going to be a crazy party house. And then I turn up and I'm so, yeah, I'm done drinking anymore. And I meant it. And I stuck by it. I'd had such a powerful time, such an encounter with God, such a meaningful moment with Jesus Christ that I needed to change it all around. I needed to actually start changing the direction my life was headed in. I gotta tell you, man, that house changed temperature real quick. So there were times when the guys would go to the club and they bring a girl back, and while they're upstairs, getting the room ready to take the young lady up, I tried to evangelize to the girl and tell her how incredible Jesus was, and you don't need to do this, he's amazing. And yeah, it started to cause some problems, but I was so passionate for God because suddenly my eyes had been opened, and I truly started to realize, and I truly started to experience that the world around us, society, the secularism, it makes promises that it can't keep, doesn't intend to keep, that the world makes promises it has no intentions of keeping, that this is what's going to lead to happiness, that this is what's going to lead to fulfillment, that this normal that we all want to chase and we all want to feel like we belong to is somehow going to fill this void that's in our lives. It's screaming at us permanently. This is what's going to do. This is what's going to work. And I found out that it is not true. I found out that I didn't feel better. It didn't matter how blind drunk I got. It didn't matter whatever happened. All the stuff that I was chasing, whether it was girls, whether it was fitting in, whether it was being the life of the party, whatever it was, none of it helped. None of it made me feel better. The movies let me down. The movies lied to me. TV lied to me. This wasn't going to work. And I got to the point where I was like, no, I'm done. I'm not playing this game anymore. And one thing that I realized is a number of years ago, a thought hit me. And this thought really encapsulates so much of my testimony, my life with God, and what got me to this point. And the simple thought is this, that if you believe that Jesus is who he says he is, the only logical response is to follow him with everything. And the reason that means so much to me, and I've even had it printed up onto a canvas that hangs in my office, the reason it means so much to me is because I believed that Jesus was who he says he was. But my response to that was pathetic. It was absolutely absurd and ridiculous and shameful. I believed that Jesus was who he says he is. I believed that, he came, lived a sinless life. He was the Son of God, died on the cross, paid the price, for my sins and yours. And that 3 days later, he rose again, conquering the power of sin and death so that I could know eternal life in him. I believed that. I believed the gospel message, but I did nothing about it. And that's why, not long after becoming a Christian and becoming heavily involved at King's, I knew that ministry is what I needed to do with my life. I knew I couldn't do anything else. The thought of doing something else I couldn't. And that doesn't mean that ministry is for everybody, but I consider it an absolute joy and an absolute honor that I get to be a pastor in a church in New Jersey. I can't believe I get to do this. After King's, I went to Bible college. While I was there, I met my incredible wife, Megan. She's easily the greatest person I've ever met. And we just decided that this is how we're going to spend our life. We're going to spend our life helping people. The way that I came to this realization that if I believe that Jesus is who he says he is, the only logical response is to follow him with everything. We want to help others do the same. And that's what we've committed our lives to. And it's taken us on some adventures. We've moved all across America right now. We've lived in different places. We now have 3 kids. And I pinch myself. I can't believe I get to do this. I get to oversee a youth ministry where we have 70 teenagers that are all, sort of trying to figure out their faith in some really, really dark environments. They're trying to figure out their faith, and I'm trying to help them make one foot in front of the other as they try and figure this out. And my hope, continually as I work with these students, these teenagers, is that they don't have to go through so much junk that so many teenagers go through. If they're able to make this commitment to Jesus now, they're going to sidestep and they're going to miss so much nonsense that so many people go through that's normal. They get to sidestep all of it if they pursue God now, and they make the decision now at such a young age. I also get to oversee our church's 2 campuses. We have our main services, and then we also have a movie theater campus that's about 25 minutes away from the main church building, and I get to oversee that. And some of the stories that come out of this, people that would dare step foot in a church that's held in a movie theater, that would never go to a traditional church building. We're starting to see people of all ages. I mean, really, we're starting to see people, in their teenage years, in their 20s, 30s, and even 50s and 60s and beyond, finding Jesus. And I pinch myself. How do I get to be a part of this? Like, how did this happen? And I can't help. And I often think back to that night in Mum and Dad's kitchen, and I'm drunk, and I just listen to that Bob Dylan song, and it just hits me. What am I doing? And what I want to encourage you with is you all start praying and you all start believing for those people in your life that you care about, that you would consider prodigals and away from God. Is there was nothing, no build up to this, but God moved in an instant. I love that I get to serve him now. I love that his mercies are new every morning. I love that I get to just be overwhelmed with his love and his grace and his mercy day by day, over and over again. I hope that as you're a part of this group that you'll experience that, and that the people that you love and that you care about, you'll get to see them experience that also. So don't be discouraged if you haven't seen any build-up. Don't be discouraged if you haven't seen any signs or any indication that they're progressing in their faith. One of the first messages I ever had a chance to speak was on the subject of hope, and it was simply that hope doesn't have any regard for today. Today's situation might be bleak, it might be murky, it might even be extremely upsetting and really hurtful. And I don't want to belittle those emotions, but I do want to bring some encouragement that, at least for my story and stories I've heard from others also, is that before I met Jesus, before I had that life-changing encounter, there was nothing that suggested I was moving towards faith. So if you're not seeing any indication, you may even be seeing hostility towards things of the faith. Please don't be discouraged. Please be encouraged that God can move in an instant. He can change someone's heart, change someone's mind, and change someone's life in an instant. I know it because I experienced it, and I'm still experiencing it today. So as you go through this group, I'll be praying for you. I'm excited to hear the great things that Mum's going to keep me updated with. And I'm believing this group's going to get off to a great start, and everyone's going to be encouraged and see some real miracles happen. Thanks so much for letting me share my story, and hopefully it encourages you as you persist with this group.